If you all have started the meeting, we can't hear.
Yes?
Yep. Okay, now.
Okay.
Can you hear us now?
Yes, now we can hear.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you.
All right, I'll
Thanks,
start
Lauren.
over. Thank you, Lauren. All right, welcome to the May 13th Board of Directors meeting for Académie Lafayette. We'll start with approval of the meeting agenda. I have one change to it. We're going to move the head of school report up and do that right after the April 11th meeting minutes. Sorry, Kent. So a little bit delayed. So other than that,
Board Chair, you need to report that you took a vote that passed in your closed session.
Oh, okay. So we did have a closed session prior to this session. And in that, we did take a vote and the action was approved. All right. Now, can I get a motion to approve the meeting agenda?
Motion, Jen.
Second, Beth.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Then we will move to approval of the April 11th meeting minutes, which, can I get a motion to approve those minutes? The March meeting, or, yeah, the April 11th meeting minutes?
I move to approve. Gwen. Kelly seconded.
All right. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Now we will move to the head of school report.
Thank you so much for allowing me to give that presentation. This is the item I want to talk about, talent management program report and the 2024-2025 school year start times, district operation and admissions and outreach, and the full report. So we want to recognize our wonderful teachers, Cherry Building. Bravo to the Cherry Kindergarten team. That is one of the hardest jobs taking our youngest student who arrive with zero French and turning them into enthusiastic French speakers. Merci, Madame Israel, Madame Michael, Madame Durham, and Missionaire Banda. Bravo. And it's the Oak Building recognition, fourth grade team, encouraging the fourth grade team for working well together and understanding that collaboration is one of the most impactful levels for student achievement. Salam. So the Our Building is recognizing the graduating class of 2024, 19 of them. 100%. I'll come back and talk about it. Graduation rate. Congratulations to the first ever Académie Lafayette International High School graduating class. 19 students will be receiving the high school diploma on May 14th. Felicitations.
Very exciting.
And the leadership team is recognizing the graduation high school graduation committee. J.D. Harper, Kate Upshur, Liz Seeley, Shanda Rami, Stella Rodman, and Vivian Nolan. The last two are students. Bravo for helping organize the first graduation ceremony for high school. So for the high school, as I said, we have 100% graduation rate. Everybody's graduating. 31% graduate, those who graduate got the manual career tech credential. It's a partnership with the school district. They studied construction, water management, cosmetics, and also culinary arts. So we have 47% did the full international baccalaureate program compared to 25% in most high schools, so which happens very high. Two graduates have been accepted to university in France, which is amazing. So we have 68% who earned the seal of biliteracy in French or Spanish, and 89% earned the IB Middle Year Program certificate.
That's a huge celebration.
Great. That's amazing.
And it's also a moment to thank all our teachers, middle, and especially the high school. They have created an amazing team, supportive team, working well with kids. Yeah, we have an amazing high school team. They really have, and we have good leadership.
And
Dr.
started
Paul-
during COVID.
During COVID, yeah.
Right.
Dr. Paul is the team, Katie Wilson, who is in charge of the IB program coordination, and Liz Silly, who is the counselor, helping kids. They did a fantastic job.
But I do think it's an important point. So these students were freshmen in fall of 2020, so
Yeah.
Yeah,
you can all remember. And they were in
They
person
came in the
because it
building.
was such a small
Yes.
class. They
Yeah.
were one of the few groups that were in person the whole time because they could spread out. They had plenty of room, and so they
Yeah,
were
the
here.
attrition rate was very low. Yeah, there was 22, one moved out of the country because the parents were teachers here, so they moved out of the country. The other one also moved out of school for medical reasons. So the first IB exam, 9 of the 19th, as I said, 60 full IB. We did the IB exams here in our building. 7th graders traveling to France, they left. And 10th and 11th grader will be traveling to Costa Rica and Senegal in early June. We have one group going to Costa Rica, another group going to Senegal. This time, it's gonna happen because we have, it's peaceful now, no more political issue. So we're working now on curriculum planning for next school year, 24-25. I've begun. MAP is the Missouri Assessment Program, and the EOC end of course testing. End of course is for high school. We're having them now. We're administering those tests, and will be done in 2 days. So May 6th and 10th, we had the teacher appreciation. Thank you to the parents and everybody who supported our teachers. We're still hiring. Most of the hiring in K5 is done. And we're still hiring here at the Middle High School, mainly local teachers. The whole international hire, almost, except maybe a couple were already done.
And it would be helpful to see those actual numbers, right? How many openings do we have? How many have been filled? How many are in progress? And so maybe when we meet in June, it would be great to just sort of see, because I know that's
Yeah.
always a huge piece is how many openings do we have and how many are coming internationally, because that is always a struggle.
So, one more thing that we're doing now, we started today, is administering the annual panorama survey for students, parents, and teachers. And we hope that we will have better participation, parent participation to this panorama survey. So we'll try to see how we can improve the participation rate for the parents.
And I know part of the struggle, the last round was, you couldn't even tell it was a Lafayette survey.
Right.
It just said panorama survey, so the emails that went out were not clear that it was a survey for the school. I know it was mentioned in the newsletter, but I think just the fact that a lot of people didn't know what that was caused low participation.
Maybe we can get the homeschool parents to carry the word.
Right, yes, absolutely.
Because one of my items is that the governance part, just let you know, the parent election board member is going on, and tomorrow is the last day for parents to vote. We've sent it a few times, and we'll send it again today, to make sure that we have more parents participating.
Do we have good participation so far?
I don't know the numbers, but I don't know. This is being run by the IT department. For the start time, as you know, this is our third survey to parents to know what they think and then also what kind of concern they have, so that whatever decision we are making, we would like to make sure that those concerns are taken into account and trying to find mitigating measures that would help alleviate any hardship that the decision may have. So this is what we have, the latest survey. So you see the numbers, 210 and 230 is the number of parents. Or the other one, number you have on the left side, the number of kids that those parents have. If they, let's say you have 2 kids at Alma, and 1 kid at Oak is gonna be 2 because we're counting by campus, one campus. That's why you have the difference in the numbers over there. If somebody have 3 kids at Alma, 2 kids at Oak, it's gonna be 2 survey because it's 2 buildings. That's why you have the difference. So what you can see here is almost 47.7, 48, and 52 breakdown for early start for Oak and Cherry, but early start for Alma. And in terms of number of students, it's more like 49-50%. And looking at it is Alma parents, 62% wants on a late start for Alma. And Cherry is one who mainly is in the other extreme, 40% want a late start for elementary, but Oak is in the middle, 47-53. Teachers are 63%, 37% who would like for the elementary school to start early. And an hour is 50, as you can see. It's interesting that it's the elementary school teachers want more to start early. So here in the building of number of siblings, because we're trying also to see how many siblings do we have, how many Oak and Cherry siblings have siblings and students have siblings at Alma, because it will create, of course, some needs for either before schools or after school support. So we have 93 Cherry students who have siblings at Alma, and 79 Oak students who have siblings at Alma. And for the middle schoolers here, we have 132 students who have siblings either at Oak or at Alma or Cherry, and now 29 high school students have siblings at Oak or Cherry. What that means is, if we decide to start Cherry and Oak at 7:30, it will mean that we need to think about those 162, some of them, not all, that may need a before school program because the parents may want to drop them at 7:30 or once they drop Cherry or Oak here. And 172 students altogether may need after school program at Cherry or Oak, because when Cherry is over at 3 o'clock, those students, the parents may put them into the after-school program, waiting for 45 minutes, whatever, waiting for all the siblings to finish. So if I will start early, that's the reverse. You will have 170 may need early care, before school care, and 62 for Alma may need homework time after school to do the homework while waiting for the parents. All these things we need to run the budget, need to work with after upper room and see, because we don't know exactly how many kids, maybe the same or more, how to accommodate this and make sure this is happening. Any question about this whole?
I'm just curious, how do we currently offer before and after school programming?
Yes,
At-
the before school is very limited.
Okay,
very-
very limited
very-
before program.
Yeah, very limited. It is, if you, let's say, at Oak, classes start at 8:30, 8:50, and we open the building 30 minutes before, kind of. At Cherry, they start at 8:30, open at 8 o'clock, around that, sometimes. So 8 or 8:50, because with the COVID, we changed everything.
Okay,
Instead of offering 1 hour or 45 minutes, we were offering 15 minutes of before schools. That was an issue.
and then is there a cost associated with doing before or after school programming for
not-
families?
No, after school, yes, but not
Okay.
before school.
Okay.
Except on late start Wednesdays.
Except for late start on the Monday.
Okay, thank you. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I should know that now.
Yeah, before school is very limited, either 15 minutes or 30 minutes. Prior to COVID, way before, I'm talking about 10 years ago, we used to offer before school would open at 7:30 for classes starting at 8:20 or 8:15, 45 minutes at least before. And then when we got COVID, we had to cut it to 15 minutes, so.
And I think a lot of parents, particularly at the elementary level, saw that as a hardship. It was a struggle if you have to be at work and when you can, so that's always been part of the conversation.
And it might be also the lack of before school start, before school care may have been a deterrent to, for some parents or prospective parents who would love to put their kids here but cannot afford
That's,
the before school care. So we need to, it's not only accommodating these parents, but also making sure that also we make our school more accessible to some of the parents.
And when do you plan to make the final decision?
Very quickly, before the end of this month, we want to let everybody know. So we will we'll let parents know after working with, as I say, all the pieces, upper room, budgeting, whatever it's going to cost, and knowing it. So I think in a week or so, we should be very close to making a decision. Okay. Operation, so we are thinking of hiring a full-time, we've already hired a full-time facility maintenance. You know, prior to that, we outsourced to MC Real. We used to have, for years, we had a person doing this. And then I think 5 years ago, we moved from that to contracting with MCH, and now we're getting back to getting somebody, and it's a cost saving for us. So we had also 150,000 safety grant to submit it to DESI. In the process, we're in the process of acquiring 3 buses, or discussion that we're going to have also. It's in the finance committee. We will discuss with during the finance committee meeting to get to 3 buses. Why do we need 3 buses? Because we have 9 buses now, and we're taking over Coke and Cherry and Armor. So our calculation, our projection are that we'll need 5 buses at Cherry and 4 at Oak and 5 here, which is how many? 13? Not more than that. I'd say 14 buses. Plus, if we were running it independently, we would need minimum 16 buses, and we have 9, which means we need to buy 5 more buses and find the drivers. That's why, for parents who are asking why we're doing what we're doing is number one, finding drivers will be extremely challenging, and we have to buy additional minimum 6 buses.
But our goal next year is that we are running bus service for all, like that we're not contracting any bus
No.
service out,
So
because that
we will
is
need,
not going
we will
well.
need 13 buses, 9 for Cherry and Oak at the same time, and part of those 9 will be coming back to run for, to bring students, Armor students, but also we need at least 2 spare buses in case we have mechanical issues.
And we're doing still pickup at the house?
For elementary, not for middle and high school. Maybe the only school doing that. So, one other, what we have here, Power School. So our playground was repaired over the spring break. Power School, we're changing student information system from Tyler, who bought again, to Power School, taking back to Power School. When I arrived here, we had Power School. And administration didn't like it, teachers like it. We changed it to something else for everybody got it, and unfortunately it was small company that did not last. We were the only one, it wasn't sustainable. We moved from there to go to Tyler. That was bought, so we're getting back to power school. And we are thinking of getting it live in August.
That's a huge undertaking to constantly switch your SIS system, I know.
huge.
Very, very not fun.
Right,
Not
that
fun at
must
all.
cause incredible frustrations among
And so
your staff.
why did we leave from Power School in the first place?
I think it was.
Can we make a short
it
version?
was,
Maybe detailed board
I've been
member?
here for 12 years. I think it would be on my 6 years maybe, because the constant fight between admin and among even admin and because the thing was at the point was it was not DESI friendly, getting reports and so on.
So it was a functionally shortcoming. Had they fixed those functionally shortcomings or?
I haven't had no
I think
idea.
it's pretty different now. It's more like developed out.
It was at least 6 years. I think 6 years ago. That's when we moved it to another A school core.
Yeah.
And then moved to Silent. And one of the reasons was School Smart Casey were wanting people to move either to consolidate, we chose Silent. We were going back to Boston.
And you've evaluated, you think it meets your needs, so you won't have to change again in a couple?
No, I don't think so. I mean, because teaching wide was fine. It's just that the admin central office thought it was too cumbersome. Okay. So what another thing was going on about operation is we have a sad news that we lost our dispatcher, Nina, who was the one who really helped us. She passed away a couple of days ago. She was the one who helped us open our transportation system. She was sick at the hospital. So we're thinking of also, of course, how we support the family. And Rick has been extremely helpful going there and managing almost 2 jobs and making sure our buses arrive on time. Thank you, Rick.
Is there anything being done to support the family? Like, is there any organized effort?
That's what we're talking about, and how we support the family. As I said, she was instrumental in opening. Without her, I don't think we would be able to open up back then. Remember, we made the decision in September to open it and she was helping recruiting drivers. So. Admission hours, I think I'll be here to answer Pam's questions that she sent me. So this is where we are. It's kindergarten. We're now at 157 students. We're behind, of course.
And our goal is 210?
No, 198.
Oh, 190.
Maximum.
Yeah.
A minimum 180. So we're talking about between 22 to 30 something, 36. So it's a breakdown, and you have 61% Caucasian and minorities 39%. This is not where we want to be. We want to be at 47 at this point, 47% minority. We are almost 10 points behind compared to what we were before. That's why I'm saying that our main problem is attracting minorities. That's where we're behind. I think we are 10 behind or 5% for Caucasian, but maybe 30 behind for minority. So this is Cherry campus, which is a little bit more diverse. It's 43, 57. And it's for the Oak, Electricity, 64, 30, 65, almost 35, which is where we were 7 years ago. So we need to see how to get back, especially for Oak also, where, as we talked about it last school year, the minority tuition was higher at Oak than at Cherry.
Yeah.
To address this, I have I have a task force set up now with Alex Foley, who is the development assistant coordinator, and Christy. We are meeting once a week, put in place action items and who need to do what, and making sure that it's being done. Our goal is to fill up our seats before school starts. And we will be looking into why parents who picked up, and kids were picked up by the lottery, did not choose our schools, which is the best school, of course, in town. But there's something that we need to figure out why it's not happening. So, and then different other actions that we are considering and making sure that we're tracking what we're doing and getting to where it needs to be done. Pam, do you have questions?
Well, I was just wondering if anyone has reached out to the 51% of African-American kids that declined. Somebody, okay.
Well, I will tell you, I had two people actually tried to, they got in, was asked to, and they chose not to accept the school. And their feedback was that the presentation, when they came, it just wasn't, it didn't seem organized enough. And then they didn't like, I guess in the kindergarten class, there was 27 students to one teacher, and one parent didn't like, they didn't like that.
That's, I think they
We
got
don't
that
have 27, we have theoretically maximum 22, but in fact, what we have now is, kindergarten, 19 and 21, I think.
Okay, so they were told 27.
So they got that
Oh,
in.
man.
And
That
they
would-
were also,
that would
they were
do it,
just
yeah.
not happy with the presentation that when they came. So they did choose other schools, but yeah, I think they liked the school. I just didn't think that made first impressions are everything.
And it's good, thank you for the feedback.
Yeah.
So we've had also anecdotal, not evidence, but people saying that in one of the survey that some people were able to choose because of lack of before care.
And that's gonna be fixed.
Yeah, so we wanna fix.
Get back to those people and let them know.
We'll do that.
And do we have a sense for what time? Because I've heard the grapevine that 7 a.m. is, that some parents want 7 a.m. care. Is that, are we looking 7 a.m., 7:30 or?
No, we don't know yet. At this point, depending on what you're gonna open first, because if, depending on whether elementary is gonna start early or late, we'll see what we need to do, make sure, and then talk to upper room too. Because if the school is providing it, it's free.
Yeah.
If it's after upper room is doing it, because 7 o'clock, your school can't do it. It's gonna be somebody else doing it, and it's not gonna be free. So those are things that we need to consider, who can afford it and not afford it. And when we did survey, most people said this, they'll be fine with school opening at 7:45 for a start time at 8:30. We have a much smaller group who say they need early, like 7:30. 7 o'clock is something else we see. If elementary school is opening at 7:30, it might be a possibility. But that would be provided by the school, and we need to find internal solutions. That's another challenge we have.
But if you open at 7:30 the elementary school, that might take care of the problem for the most part. essentially.
Yeah.
And Christy will get in touch with those people who declined because of that.
We will
Let them know.
We'll make sure it's gonna be done. Everything's happening with the same people.
Good,
Is the
good deal.
personnel the same need for if the elementary school's open early versus the, Armor? Because I would think personnel needs
The
to
personnel-
watch the students, because I would assume more personnel is needed for the elementary
Oh, no,
kids.
high school.
Well, fair, but,
Yeah,
You think it's high school?
No, I'm teasing.
No, yeah, it's.
Yeah, because
But it is
high
needed
middle-
for
It
sure.
is, but elementary.
Elementary.
It's gonna be elementary, middle and high school, many of them may not.
Right,
need that.
right.
We can still offer, tutoring or something, if they come
Yeah,
in
it
here.
should be
Or
study hall or
Study hall
halls,
in the
yeah.
morning and something like that. It's possible.
But presumably the older kids can more manage
Watch
themselves, you know,
Right,
come,
right.
you know.
Okay, I think I'm done, and any other thing that I need to talk about, no, I think.
I think I think we'll dig into this at the June strategic planning session, and I think at that one, I know you're gonna have an updated report for us to see, you know, on how things are tracking against goals, but that chart we looked at in the finance committee meeting that showed the enrollment by year, I think that'd be great for the board to see for the next meeting, just.
Yeah, it is, the percentage of kindergarten who graduated in 8th grade, since the beginning of the school year. So how we started, and what was starting with 34%, and then moving up. And then we know also that after the years of COVID around there, we lost 62 students around there, and we were not able to get them back. But also the attrition rate was higher after that. So we need to, the board, I'll present it by them, and the board can see.
Because I think that it's a good way to see how the progress has been over the years in terms of how many we start out with in kindergarten and how many go through 8th.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's been quite a while since we've looked at long-term projection, but when we were considering opening the high school, we looked at sort of, here's what we can anticipate year over year, what the budget is, what the shortfalls would be. We knew there would be shortfalls, sort of where are we on that overall sort of long-term
versus projections.
Right.
That's good, and then for the diversity too, where are we, and the enrollment projection and so on, yeah.
Also, I would suggest you talk with Carlos about joining the task force, because she's a crackerjack recruiter.
Okay, I'll do it.
Yeah. She might be willing to do it. You tell her I said so.
But the thing, I know what would be the answer. She will say, I'm willing to join if Pam is joining.
There we go, Pam.
I'm willing to join if she joins.
Okay.
All right.
Talk to
This is
her.
recorded.
Because there's a duo that, the tandem that did the recruitment for years.
Right. And Carlos helped start the school, so she was with the school since we started, as was Pam,
That woman
so.
gets it. Yeah.
She
So-
retired, was it 2 years ago?
Yes, 2022. So, any other, no, you done?
Mr. Mayor, I have something. As the sponsor of St. Louis University, we were very pleased to be able to recognize the teachers during National Teacher Appreciation Week. And we wanted them to know that the visits that we've made, we have seen the teachers and the students truly interact in a very pleasing way. And it's very refreshing to see the students in the math class, and they're, everything's French and the kids speak to explain the problems. I like that. I can do the 5th grade math. I did something that
Yeah, Dr. Sanders worked with SLU. SLU is our sponsor, and she has been in touch with me regularly and supporting our teachers with Alexander, who's online, I think, supporting our teachers in different ways and making sure that they appreciate it. Thank you.
Great sponsor.
Thank you.
And as you know, SLU also gave $5,000 for our funded needs.
Funded
Oh, nice.
nice.
And is supporting also different other initiatives.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right,
Will you
now I
pull
know-
up Kent's
Yeah.
presentation
So you're gonna
for
leave
you?
this here?
Yes,
that we
yes,
can-
okay.
okay. So, if, I don't know if we mentioned at the beginning, but the high school graduation dinner is tonight, so that's where he's escaping to.
Congratulations.
Oh, you can see
Yeah.
it.
Busy week.
You
Do you
want
wanna take the head of the table and do your slides? You wanna sit right there?
I'm happy to do
Yeah,
whatever
you-
you like. It'll be harder to kick me out of the room if I.
That's right. And so Kent Peterson, for those of you who've been to our strategic plans, he is a consultant with School Smart and helps to just provide a lot of advising and thoughts for us about how to continue to grow as a board. And I know through Black KC, they do a lot of talking about just the history of charter schools, why they exist, that we thought would be important for our board to know, that will be recorded and shared with future board members as well, because we think it's just important as charter school board members to be aware of, like, why do we exist as a charter school? So I asked Kent to join us and walk us through the quick 25-year history of charter.
So, I was born 68 years ago in South Dakota. All right? Thank you for letting me be part of your work. It is an absolute delight as a lifetime educator to be in this room and to watch you work and to watch the volunteer effort that leadership puts into making all this work. And so thank you for letting me be a part of it. It's a little disconcerting that when we want to talk about things that are old, that my phone rings.
I thought immediately of you.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, anytime.
So this next, however long you want to spend, but a minimum of 12 minutes, it really is about the charter school movement and the choice movement in general, and where that impetus comes from, what that track record and trajectory has looked like, and then hopefully some thoughts about why that's important to you as a board and what comes next. So I'll have things on the screen here. I don't know if this is in your package or not, but it's all available to you. And I probably should change this title. Instead of the start of charters, I ought to put the start of choice. And actually, now that I think about that, that's not even quite accurate as the start of choice. If we took it as the start of choice, you'd probably have to fold in some other traditional school options that allow families to choose. But the notion of choice is what drove the charter policy conversation back in the early 90s. At this particular time, because I want this to be about me, I was running education policy and technical assistance to states for the National Governors Association. So in '94, as this became enacted as a federal law, just prior to that, the roll up to that, my job had been in DC doing sort of the how to help states understand and apply whatever federal laws and actions came down. So the charter school debate and discussion was sort of a central part of the work that I was a part of. I have to tell you, in all honesty, among our work group teams, I was probably the least ardent supporter of charter schools and the choice movement. It's fascinating when you look at federal legislation today. You would look at what got passed in this time period and say, that is a tremendously bipartisan piece of work. And by today's standards, it absolutely was. It had really important oomph from both sides of the aisle. I don't remember the final vote off the top of my head, but it included lots of Democrats and Republicans. But in the policy debate realm at the time, the movement toward choice into charters was viewed as a conservative, George Bush Sr., Lamar Alexander, Secretary of Education, policy move around for choice. There were folks on the left who viewed it as exclusively an effort to try and break up teachers' unions. So there was lots of rigorous discussion and debate about the value of choice. The theory of change that folks trotted out and won the day is that the policy intent was, we have to infuse innovation and flexibility into the public school realm somewhere, somehow. That was an absolute. There also, I guess there were sort of three policy promises. One is we need to infuse innovation and flexibility. Two was, and this was sort of the Republican right-leaning mantra, we have to let market forces drive change. So those folks whose policy points of view go to market-driven solutions, charters was part of that answer. And the third piece was that competition and market forces will lift all boats. If we have a bunch of successful innovation, a bunch of pioneering efforts around charter schools, that's the ticket to elevating the work of urban education in particular across the country. So that was the promise. I would argue there's a set of observations I'd have at the 30-year mark in this work. Overall, those three promises, innovation and flexibility, market forces, and lifting all boats, has shown some capacity to outperform traditional school peers. So that's awesome. If you look at the charter schools and charter systems and sectors that are most successful across the country, real attention to quality and sponsors that are in a laser-like focused quality conversation with the schools they sponsor. If you look at the data, that looks like that matters as much or more than just market forces. So that matters. We don't have a very good understanding, I think, to this day about the fiscal reality around money and education. You can show great data today about spending just in charter schools in Kansas City and outcomes and results for kids that show, I'll just pick SVN, for example. They're like a notch below you guys, but in that top 5 or 6 charter schools locally. And they're at the very bottom of the list in what they spend per kids. So if you want to slice the data and say, it's not the money that matters, there's something else that matters, you can run data that says that. I would argue, oh, it's in my slide somewhere, I gotta wait till I get to argue that. So money, for-profit charter school systems, I don't think we have a great understanding about that. We say that autonomy matters and innovation and flexibility matters. Vague autonomy doesn't matter much, with the exception of you and another charter school or two. My view would be that if you walk into 80% of the charter school classrooms in Kansas City, they look profoundly like 80% of the classrooms in KCPS. And that the autonomy that was promised, that a few people have capitalized on and do really, really well as a charter sector and a charter system, that autonomy really hasn't held. And if you look at the reporting you do to DESE, it's profoundly like the reporting every other LEA has to do to DESE. The grand bargain of we're going to trade off flexibility for results hasn't really happened in a fulsome way. If you look at the results you put on the screen about your high school graduation class and say, what have we been freed up from in reporting to DESE? You can't find. And I think that say we've really done that autonomy. I'd highlight the last point. Research, development, and innovation has been limited. We had some great out-of-the-blocks innovations that changed some schools pretty significantly and made some new offerings. If you look over the last decade, we've been pretty static in terms of real innovation and education to the charter sector that matters. So that'd be my observation. Let me pause there if there are any thoughts, questions. Also, since Ed Rucker is in the room, I'm loath to say much more about charters, knowing I likely get corrected. And same with data. any number of folks could have done this conversation.
And for those who don't know, Ed Rucker, founding father of the school.
Wrote the charter.
George Washington.
Wrote the charter. And the first meeting, yeah, so he's our George Washington.
Because were we the first charter approved or one of the first?
In Missouri.
In Missouri.
First charter approved in Missouri.
Yes.
Right.
Thank you, Ed.
And there was an
And I'm
early,
proud of it too.
a couple of things about Missouri in particular that I'd hold up. This is from opinion data that the association does in some cases. And there's great drill down data, sort of public polling on the notion of choice and charters in Missouri. What I think's fascinating about Kansas City in particular, and it relates some to your transportation conversation, and where I think future conversations of leaders in this city probably ought to spend time on. Kansas City now, we'll look again at the numbers in a little more detail. Half the kids in Kansas City are in charter schools, and half are in traditional public schools. But I don't think that tells the whole story about choice, because of those half of the kids in KCPS, about 20% of them are in a school of choice on that side of the aisle. So Kansas City collectively is a city where about 70% of our families are families of choice. They're making a specific decision to not be at a neighborhood public elementary school, traditional public elementary school, and be in some other version of choice. And yet, we have a transportation system that by most definitions of urban transportation isn't very good from the start, and isn't designed with kids and families in a mobile system of choice from the get-go. And we leave it up to everybody at individual LEAs to try and figure that out. I think that's untenable in the long run. I think that's a policy environment that board members from multiple boards ought to be in conversations with KCATA, the city, the county, others to frame, if education is a priority, what does it really take in a city of choice to have a transportation system that meets the education needs of kids? We've never started with that. The yellow bus system never started with that. We pretend as if the yellow bus system was actually a great thing. And how do we run our own? I think there's a larger conversation. If innovators like charter boards don't lead that, it's not likely to happen. So, which sort of gets a little bit to my last point there, is Missouri as a whole, Kansas City certainly is a part of that, with few exceptions, like you, is a pretty dismal education story. And so, yes, doing your part to hold up this pillar of success is critically important and so appreciated. But there's so much more to do that doesn't fall on classroom teachers, doesn't frankly fall on your building administrators. It's leaders in the community that have to hold up, what comes next for innovation in education? What comes next in scaling up the learning from this marvelous, innovative experience that can drive more impact around Kansas City?
And for anybody who doesn't know sort of the dismal picture, it's things like we are almost at the bottom as far as teacher pay. We are almost at the bottom as far as education dollars that the state puts towards fund it. So, I mean, we are among the worst in the country as far as how we dedicate resources to teachers and education.
And in outcomes as well.
Correct. Yes, and right.
Yes.
Not surprisingly,
It shows, yeah.
that shows up in outcomes.
And we fully acknowledge that our higher ed partners, who I don't, how many of you have kids in the higher ed space these days? It's a little pricey, send your kids anywhere. No knock on SLU in particular. But not only does it cost, we've gotten comfortable with a per pupil cost in higher ed that's exorbitant, but SLU needs a $4 billion endowment on top of that. WashU needs an $11 billion endowment on top of that. University of Missouri needs a $2 billion. And so the notion of what resources we ought to be putting into kids who we know have deficits in their developmental assets, being able to shine a light on that in a different way. If it doesn't happen in boardrooms, and it doesn't happen across boards and enlightened education leaders who can advocate for it, it's not likely to happen anyway. So, the charter landscape in sort of at a glance, in Kansas City, as we said, you've got 20 LEAs in the charter sector here, 42 buildings, 13 or 14,000 students. Half of the KCPS attendance area students are in charter schools. St. Louis is a little larger, is a little smaller, larger system, smaller share in the market space. The difference sort of between the two, there's an intentionality today in St. Louis to launch more charter schools. So that's a more vibrant effort to figure out how to grow and launch some more innovation there. There's an organization similar to School Smart in St. Louis called the Opportunity Trust that's investing in year-long efforts of sort of wannabe charter school leaders to help them get launched. That we've got 50% market share today is a bit new news. It's been that way since 2021, but the few years prior to 2021, it was a fairly slow ramp up. If you go back to probably as recently as 2006 or so, 25% of the kids were in charter schools, 75% of them were in traditional public schools, and that's been a fairly consistent then downturn on the part of the district and upswing on the part of charter schools to get to about 50-50 since 2021.
And yet, one thing I think that's interesting to look at the full trend line, a lot of people think that charter schools coming into law cause KCPS to shrink. But if you go back the 30 years before charter schools existed, it was a steady, right? They had 70,000 in, I think, the 60s and 30,000 by the time charters. So, I mean, it's not something that charters caused. It was happening long before charters existed.
Yeah, and the issue, I don't have the data off the top of my head, but what's happening with young families and the number of kids, a serious look about the KCPS attendance area, I think is worrisome. I mean, depending upon where you are in the city and where there's some new populations moving in, some changing populations, what's going to happen with just the number of school kids? I think you'll continue to see slight declines anyway. So that's.
Yeah, with the population and lower birth rates and.
Yep. Again, sort of at a glance here, this is just total enrollment in Missouri charters year by year from you, as you said. I believe, if I remember right, Ed, you were the very first charter school to sign, right?
Correct.
And I'm just bringing that up again.
It's our 25-year anniversary.
But so on the far left in 1999, and it was shortly after that. There, I'm trying to remember who all was in the room. Ed, there was a series of early governance board training like conversations, and it was you all, and Tolbert, Della Lamb. UA was probably in the room.
Gordon Parks for sure.
Gordon Parks was in the room. So there's that early cadre that started back in '99, and then there's been some ebb and flow. There's been some openings, there's been some closings. Getting us to the numbers that you saw on the earlier slide, but 37 total charter LEAs across the state today, and 25,000 kids. So it's a wonderful sector to be a part of. Probably not much magic in this. This is across the charter sector in Missouri. 80% of the students roughly are low income. 87% of the students fit the student groups category, which means Black, Latino, Hispanic, ELL, special education, or low income. And I wanted to highlight that because the next slide is going to talk about where we are sort of academically as a sector, the 37 LEAs that are in that space. Actually, I think I want to show this one just shows the opening and closing, but I really want to skip because we've just got a couple minutes to sort of the overall academic piece. And again, thank you for being an anomaly in this space. Your leadership as a board, your school leadership, the work that your teachers, parents, families, and kids put in are a standout from a chart like this. But what's here, you see in the blue bars are Missouri proficiency data of all students statewide. Then if you take the subgroups that we serve a lion's share of as charter schools, and you compare charter schools in the gold bars, I'm sorry, that's charter schools, all students, compared to the statewide subgroups. Charters outperform in a really healthy way those things. But so that's great. We outperform in some ways what happens with subgroups. We also, if you compare subgroup to subgroup, charters traditional to regular schools, and my guess is I've got this chart mislabeled. So I'm gonna have to go back and check. Don't distribute this yet. Edit this in the recording. The data story is, as a sector, charter schools outperform their peers in the traditional public school space. And then when you drill down to the subgroup population, you outperform them as well.
And yet, I do think it's important to note, as you all looked at the last slide and the typical demographics of charter schools, that is not the demographics of Lafayette, right?
Right.
We serve around 30% free and reduced lunch, less than 50% students of color. And so oftentimes I think state test scores are a direct reflection of what is your free and reduced lunch student population. They don't have the same ability to learn as all students, but they come with greater gaps that need to be addressed by education. And so it's not always a fair comparison, and it's oftentimes why we get a lot of pushback is, well, yeah, you serve a different student population and that's why your academics are better, which is why I think it's really critical for this group to continue to push. I know our goal is to better reflect the community that we serve. And I think it needs to continue to be our goal, because it's not a fair comparison to say, yes, I do think we do great work at Lafayette, but we need to recognize we serve a different student population.
But it's this slide and the blue bars and the gold bars, however I should label it, that I wanted to end with, because I think it makes the case for the really important work ahead of you as the energy that continues this great work at Académie Lafayette, but also begs for your added engagement in education, the charter sector, and writ large. If you look at the left-hand side of this screen, we're talking about the percentage of kids who are proficient. And the highest bar on the chart is 40%.
Yeah.
So charters, yes, is collectively are outperforming as a sector traditional schools, but so what? Where we are as a state, as a community, is we're failing our kids. And that's the larger conversation that has to really filter in to boardrooms. It has to filter in across boards and in communities in Kansas City. So that's where I would, that's your news.
Right.
Can you go to the last slide, because I think that's a nice picture too,
I don't
or not nice.
And I'll send sort of all of the background. as well.
Presentation,
Yes.
yeah,
I think it's in the folder, but I'll double check
But
and
this
send it
just
out to
kind of,
everybody.
this supports a lot of,
Yeah.
what you've been saying, but it also puts that emphasis on what we need to do in terms of enrollment and, Pam, some of your questions and things that you're talking about. How do we, when we know what we're doing for next year, and if we have the opportunity to get students in the buildings earlier, what can that do to help all of this? Because Missouri is not a leading state.
The couple of pieces at the bottom were 46. We may have bumped up a spot after this past legislative session. We are lower than that in our effective tax rate per taxpayer for education, human services, and social services. We are one of the lowest taxing states in the country around that. I'll have to look around. I do work for School Smart. I do work for the Opportunity Trust in St. Louis. I also do work for the Charter School Association. So I'm friends with everyone in the world. But I have to say, we had sort of a meeting of all the heads of schools, and the other day, there was an update on the legislative session. And it was an association meeting, and we bragged for a bit about getting through this legislation. That there was a sort of a giveaway on a broader definition of choice that's going to allow more opportunity to take public money to follow kids to private schools. That's the advancement of the choice mentality. So there was some conversation about that, but they said what we did get was an increase in spending for public education. And in today's budget times, what a great win. And public education spending in the budget went up about 1%. So we stayed within 2 or 3% of the rate of inflation. And I would have to say, as an education advocate, that's a big loss. And so the bigger picture elements ought to fall more squarely on the shoulders of the adults in the room who take on governing responsibility. You guys are blessed that you have a school administration and a school administrative and staffing team that knows this work and does their work exceptionally well, and being able to do the governance responsibility over that ought to also have some space for how do we elevate our sites to impact in the region beyond this. So I'd like to whet your appetite for that.
All right, excellent. And I mean, for those of you who didn't see it, I think it was just last week that the legislation passed a new sort of required minimum for teachers, which is still painfully too low. I think it's 40,000. I think we were already at that very low level, but it is always a struggle. I know we talk about as a board over the last numerous years, we consistently raise teacher salaries. It's still not nearly, I mean, what we ask our teachers to do is an overwhelming amount, but we are hindered by what the state gives it, right? You can't raise funds for salaries. So it is a constant struggle.
You can have a $4 billion endowment.
Yes, okay, if somebody could figure that out, then we can use that for salaries. But short of that,
Yes.
it is always, it's always a struggle.
And this emphasizes, we had a teacher speak to us last month in stakeholder comments, Madam Sharbat, and some of this data shows we improve. We're not next to the last anymore, but it's still bad. 46
It's
is
awful.
bad.
I mean, what we ask teachers to do for that salary is awful.
But, and again, the last thing I promise. having the serious adult policymakers, which I count you all as being the board members, eyes on more important thing matters. And I hold up the state of Georgia as an example. About 30 years ago, same time charter school work was emerging, Georgia was 47th to 50th in every indicator of child well-being and child maternal health. They were bottom of the barrel. There was a decision on the part of the governor, big foundation, heads of state agencies that said, we've got to figure out how to do planning at the county level across schools, cities, counties. We've got to bring a collaborative child, family-centered planning model forward. They're not anywhere near done yet, but 28 years later, they're in the mid-30s on every meaningful childhood outcome in the state of Georgia. And they can track of the counties that adhered and had fidelity to really thinking and planning and engaging differently at the county level, their trend lines were steeper and more positive than those who paid that collaborative work short shrift. So that'd be my last piece, is that attention on the right thing matters, and we can do it.
On that hopeful note.
And so you can not only be you were the first
Yes.
charter school,
Yes.
yes, you were the very first, you can be the next to figure out how to scale, how to bring scale to this conversation.
Right. Well,
Thank you. Any
Thank you,
questions?
kids.
No, thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's always good to see you.
My pleasure. Thank you for all you do.
Yeah, and you.
So I think, I mean, on the governance committee, I think we're always trying to figure out how do we continue and engage in the higher level conversation, the things as a board that we want to make sure we're all knowledgeable about, because we can get just down into the nitty gritty every month of where we are on data and test scores and all of that. So just taking a minute to think higher level that we continue to push ourselves.
Back to your earlier point, you chatted about how we're not a fair comparison to other charter schools because of our student makeup.
Mhm.
When we double click into our student categories, are we in line with other charter schools at that point?
Yeah, I mean,
We're above though.
right, so when you look at our subgroup data, we are oftentimes above. We have dipped down recently. Since
Yeah.
COVID, we have seen some changes there that we have to work on. But yes, oftentimes our subgroups are outperforming, but it's such a low bar, is right? I
Absolutely,
mean,
yeah. We're
it
leading the
is-
red 25%.
right, yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of work to still be done there.
Yeah.
All right, well, since you're speaking, it's governance
Oh,
committee.
okay.
I think you've touched on things.
Right,
so
I
it's-
think-
Yeah.
Yes, so yeah, everybody had a chance to meet Nathaniel. We are very excited to have you here.
Welcome.
Thank you for joining our.
Thanks for everyone's vote.
We approve, so we're excited to have you. And board elect, so it is the parent board election. It is tomorrow. It closes for any parents, everybody. Both guardians got a vote. There are two candidates, both of whom are really high quality. So if you haven't had the chance to sort of watch, it's on YouTube. They recorded just their session. And I wrote down their names, Crystal Turner and Southern. I'm forgetting Sean Southern, thank you. But yes, I think they have impressive backgrounds, but tomorrow the voting closes, and so we will know who will be our new parent-elect. They would likely join the June retreat if they get through all the background checks and all of that in time. And so with the new parent-elect, that would leave one open board seat. We can have up to 13. We've never had 13 members, but I think we all know as board members, we take on a lot of work for this role, so it's nice to be able to spread that out a little bit. And so I think one of the things that we'll want to think about is looking at what are sort of the qualities of our current members, what gaps do we have? We've had a couple people interested, but I think we want to look at sort of what is the skills that we most need to fill. So we'll at the next, well, maybe not. I don't know that there'll be time at the retreat for that, but coming up, we'll look at sort of what our gaps are. And that's all for governance.
On to finance.
All right. Before I start the budget presentation, we want to take a 5-minute stretch your legs. Get up and use the restroom at all?
Does anybody need a break?
I think we do.
Okay, so let me get through accounts payable and the finance report, and then we'll take a 5-minute.
Before going to the draft budget.
Yes.
And there's not much more after that.
All right, so accounts payable, in the finance packet, there was the Excel file with all the AP transactions. Hope people had a chance to look through those. I also noted a few in the finance report. Just one thing I did want to note in there was with the Cigna insurance. So the amount that we paid during April was a little bit less, quite a bit less, $75,000 less than typically. It was $40,000. Typically, it's about $115,000. And the reason for that was we received an admin credit for switching to Cigna by December 1st. They did drag their feet a little bit, but I prodded them along, and we got that credit in April. So,
That's great.
anyone have any additional questions about the accounts payable transactions?
I was just curious on our new sort of cleaning services. It looked like there was a delay in payment. Was that about what we expected, or what we budgeted? Is that all
Yeah.
anticipated? Okay.
Yes, and there was a little bit of a delay there due to the invoices being sent to a wrong email
I saw
address.
that, so that's
so-
all figured out now.
So typically, yeah, that should be about $11,000 per campus, which comes out to about $34,000.
Okay.
And that's what we had planned for.
Okay.
Good question. If there's no additional questions, can I have a motion to approve the April AP transactions?
I move to approve April transactions.
A second. Olivier?
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries.
Next item is the finance report. So cumulatively, July through March, the third-party accountants report that revenues exceed expenditures by $776,000. So revenues, we have 15.8 million, expenses of 15.1, and so a net there of about $776,000. And the expenses include capital. This is one of the reports that they give us. The main thing I wanted to point out there is just the forecast that they have, and so this kind of towards the middle is the forecast. So the net income that they're projecting right now is about $800,000, almost $900,000, as we sit at March.
So that's for the full year in terms of how much more cash we're gonna have in the bank compared to what we're spending for the year.
And just to kind of coattail off of what Olivier is saying, through March, we have cumulatively cash in, cash out, cash in of $424,000 that we've received rather than spent. So changing cash, in July to March, we have collected $424,000 instead of spending on the positive side. All right, so next item is about the bus purchases. So in the March Finance Committee meeting, we did talk about purchasing buses at that point in time. However, there was concern about not receiving the ESSER reimbursement, and so we wanted to make sure that the current year was balanced before we made any kind of decisions. We put that on pause. We resumed those talks at this meeting. And some of the things that we talked about back in March were the age of the buses that we would want to purchase. We didn't want to purchase necessarily 2014s. So we're looking at more like 2018 buses, kind of like what we purchased back in September, October. The reason behind that was the 2011s that we purchased last year have been such a repair nightmare that we wanted to have that in mind, that when we go to purchase additional buses, and the four that we purchased in September seem to do really well. We've had some brakes that have had to be replaced, but that seems pretty standard. But the engines in those are the Cummins diesel engines, and those can run to 250,000 miles. So those are, I think, really good investments. And so we're looking to purchase 3 additional buses to meet our needs with the Oak campus. And Mr. Bang talked about how we need 4 and 5 for the Oak and Cherry, so 9 buses there. And then we're gonna tier as well to come up with 13 total buses. And so we need to purchase, 14 total buses, 13 total buses. And so we need to purchase 3 more buses. And with Fund a Need, we were able to raise a little over $30,000, and so that's gonna help with funding those buses, and the school would contribute 170. And so we're going to ask for a motion to approve the purchase of 3 school buses not to exceed $200,000, but Olivier, did you have anything else to add?
Yes, I'd like to bring a little bit of context to this discussion. Could you bring up the graph with the P&L for the transportation, please?
It's gonna take a second.
Sure.
And one of the things that has happened, Olivier's suggestion is we've got a separate P&L now for transportation, one for the operating the school and then one for development, right?
Yes. I think, we live in a world that is largely governed by DC. It was an interesting point that was made by Ken before. So the way we track our expenses and our revenue is largely dictated by what DC wants to see. And it's not necessarily the most easy for board members to understand and have a good sense for what are we doing, how efficient are we, and are we really spending the money where we should be. So I think we're going to work with Stephen to come up with a way to map these accounts so that we have a clear sense for our expenses. So we've started with with transportation, which I think was an area of particular exposure for us because it's a business that we're new in. We don't know much about it. We don't really have any experts in-house. And so I wanted to see kind of where we are. And, as a fiduciary responsibility of the board, I think I have some concern that we should be aware of. In the budget for next year, we are on track to spend $1 million on transportation. So if you look at the 4th column, so between the salary, so part of what is hard is that when you look at our budget numbers, the wages are lumped into salaries. So it's the 15 million of salaries that we're spending. So if we isolate that, it's $500,000 right there, plus the benefits. Another thing that's hard to track is transportation is a capital-intensive business. We do buy buses, and so we commit some capital, and DC tracks cash expenses. They don't really track depreciation for these expenses. So if we had the depreciation line is $100,000, so we add up to $1 million. As a comparison point, the last year that we had a full outsourced service was in 21-22, and we were spending $400,000. So we're talking about investment where essentially are doubling our costs. So clearly we had a problem. Clearly we had a need to address the shortcomings of this outsourced service. But I want us to be cautious about continuing to spend money on that account without having a clear sense of how the money is spent. So I know there is today a demand to buy 3 more buses. I know it's a pressing demand, so I'm not super excited about what I'm going to say, but I would like us to consider pausing for a little bit and have some assessment of how we're doing from an efficiency standpoint with this budget item. And are we really as efficient as we could be? Do we really need these 3 extra buses? Can we structure our routes differently so that we can do more with less? And I understand we need to balance that with the pressing need to figure out what we're going to do with the routes next year. So I know it's throwing a wrench in the system, but these numbers are high.
Olivia, I might mention here as well, and I don't see a prime example is that over the last 2 months, I decommissioned 3 buses that I think the district bought maybe a year ago. What I mean to decommission is that now they're out of service because the engines were blown. Just to kind of give you a kind of realization on that, I think we spent like $70,000. By the time that I called Santa Fe, we had a tow for $1,500 times 3. Then they had to decommission them by the state or the EPA. We had to drill holes in the blocks and get all the fluids out and the batteries out. Then we had to tow them to Midwest Salvage. So there's another fee there on top of that. So by the time that I decommissioned the buses by EPA standards, we were paying after scrap of the buses due to decommission our buses, on top of the $70,000 that we spent for 3 buses. So do the math, and we lost a lot of money.
Did we get those environmental buses, or were we getting something
They'll
with that
start
grant?
next year.
So I think that's a really good
Or,
point.
I mean, not next school year, but the one after.
So we have a whole
If we-
year.
But if we can bridge.
It would be nice to have some sort of capital plan to understand
That's correct.
how many buses we've bought so far, how long we think they're gonna be staying in service, when are we gonna replace them, so we can, unlike most of our expenses, which are recurring every year, this is something where we, we have these assets, we're gonna have to replace and maintain these assets, so we should have a little bit of a longer term perspective to understand, it's gonna be $1 million next year, what's gonna be the year after, and the year after, and the year after.
It's a very similar strategy with when you start to talk about preventative maintenance. When you talk about HVAC, you start talking about roofs and things like that.
Yeah.
Because if you don't start putting money away, it's gonna hit you, and now all of a sudden, 1 year, you're spending over $1 million. That's not there because it wasn't planned.
And Rick, can you speak to, because I think you have looked at different routes, I mean, have you looked at the efficiencies with the routes, which I know is hard until you know what students need the bus for the following year and what the routes will look like, but you've kind of dissected that.
Currently this year, we're running about 40% of the population of students, and we're looking to increase that to about 60% of our student body. In the transportation business, it's an expensive, very, very expensive endeavor that you take on. You take on fuel, but also it's being able to find the quality of drivers as well. If you go around every school district, they're always looking for drivers. But it's the maintenance and upkeep. Right now, where we're at, as you see, we're paying the rent. I think we're paying around $20,000 a year for rent. Our shop fees is about $45 an hour for that, which is pretty inexpensive. You start taking them up north by Worlds of Fun and some of the centers up there, you're looking at anywhere from $150 to $125 per hour to work on diesel or gas as well. We did look at some of the electrical buses too. That hasn't been confirmed. We're still kind of looking to that in the sense of the grant, the options, and what it costs. But it's very, very expensive endeavor, just with the tires and the maintenance and that type of thing. But I'll go back to those 3 buses. There was no preventative maintenance program done on that. And so therefore now I've adopted a preventative maintenance program where we have a rotation every 2 weeks. Those buses are getting the fluids checked on them and things like that, because we're going through breaks. And the reason why those buses had to be decommissioned is because all 3 of the buses, the engines blew.
And those were gasoline type engines, is that correct? They weren't the diesel type.
I mean, I go back to, I think when we first had this conversation in 2022, we were adamantly opposed. We said we had no business running a bus company. We had no interest in doing it. And then we started the school year, and the option we had for transportation was so horrendous. I mean, none of our students were getting to school, and we were paying a large amount of money. So I think the struggle is, I totally agree, it makes no financial sense, and we have not a single other option.
Well, I think the decision to bring this service in-house makes sense. There was no other alternative, we had to do it. The issue is that now that we're running this service, what kind of expertise do we have and how efficient are we? I mean, is it $1 million? Should we really be spending $1 million? What is the benchmark with an efficient school system? So what I like to do is to bring in an expert to help us benchmark our efficiency, to help us develop best practices, to help us assess how we have a sustainable transportation service in the long run.
I'm
But if
curious,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
oh, go ahead.
Well, but if we delay purchasing the buses now, I don't disagree that we need to understand that to run it, but if we delay purchasing it now and we can't deliver the students to school by August,
Well, I don't think
know what kind of a delay.
I don't think we need to delay necessarily for a very long term. So I happen to know someone who just retired from the Liberty School District. He was 20-year veteran transportation director. You probably know Jeff Bear. I don't know if you've interacted with him, but it might be somebody that we could bring in, sit down with the staff. It's a 2 weeks process. We can approve the motion, and so that we can engage in this conversation to purchase these buses, but still have a review to assess really what it is that we need, and what is the goal in terms of our benchmark cost per students based on the increasing population we transfer, but at least have some guardrails and framework to help us go through this new business that we know nothing about.
So are you suggesting that we may not need the 3 additional buses?
We don't know.
We don't know. We don't know.
But somebody
I can
needs
share that
to
with
know
you
we
now.
need,
Currently,
yeah.
our students are on that bus for about an hour,
Yeah.
maybe a little bit over an hour.
It's a long time.
For example, this summer, we have 10 routes, we have 9 buses to be able to get our students, because they're spread throughout the city. Currently, right now, we're kind of maxed out on the mileage and the time to be able to get our students on school on time. And I even pushed it up a little bit this year when I got on, because our buses would be a little too late, so we started our times a little earlier. And the IT department, before I got here, adopted the transport system, what you're referring to. This
Transport.
Right, and we did our training with Liberty.
Okay.
And we've done.
Oh, you did, okay, great.
And so we've been using that transport system here, and it's helped our time and our efficiency. But currently, right now, our students are on that bus for a little bit over an hour. By the time we start at 6 a.m.
Too long.
And it's just the traffic in the city.
Yeah.
But what I hear you say is it's about more than just purchasing these 3 buses. Before we make any other big decisions about sort of running our own transportation company, we need to sort of do a review as to.
We do assess, we want to replace Nina. We
I'm sorry?
want to replace Nina, right? We need to
Right,
assess
yeah.
what level should we need to upgrade the position to have somebody, because, this is a good opportunity for us to understand how we're going to be setting ourselves for the long run so that we can manage those costs. I think there is
a hot topic all over Kansas,
Yeah.
or St. Louis Public Schools just offered
Yeah.
the
Absolutely.
family $75
Right.
to transport
So-
their
To not
children.
use
And back to Ken's point, it is insane how we handle transportation.
Yes.
It makes the money collectively that we spend on transportation, and we're all in the same company, in the same community. On my block, I probably see 5
Right.
school buses go down my street to get the same kids, but to different, right? So there's a bigger conversation, but in the meantime, we have to figure out what we're doing.
So to be clear, I'm not advocating we don't buy the buses.
Yeah, got it.
I'm advocating let's take a little bit of time
Yeah.
to position ourselves, working with Greg, to make sure that we are set up. We don't start pouring money because we all want the kids to be here on
Right.
time,
Yeah.
minimize the time of the bus, have as much, we don't want anybody to be late. But at the same time, this is.
Yeah, because this is not sustainable.
Right, yeah.
This is not
that-
sustainable.
Feels a lot.
That money is.
And I'd share this with you as well. Here's another example. I had the opportunity, I went over and spoke to Frontier, the head of schools at Frontier. Frontier just purchased 25 brand new buses.
Gee, where'd they get that
They
money?
just hired a transportation manager for $76,000
Who are you
and an
talking about?
assistant director at Frontier. And now they're also purchasing and building a transportation center to host their buses, because KC Premier, the owner, Jazz, just dropped out in the last 3 weeks. Frontier, just left, and Frontier was out on their own to provide transportation. So they had to lease buses from Midway Transportation Center at the last minute with 3 weeks of school left.
So I mean, it's very,
Transportation.
yeah, it's very clear we're bringing a
Right,
challenging
needs to be
environment.
investigated and looked at.
But I agree, we need to take more.
Yeah, we need to take a look at it and see how it works and how we can become better at what we do. Because if we spent all that money on those 3 buses and then they weren't looked at, and then we only had them for a year's time, I'd hate for us to, purchase some more and then we go through that same. So we
Well,
probably
we'd
do
be-
need to know best practices.
Yeah, and we would be purchasing newer buses. My only concern is that we find ourselves kind of in that crunch that we did when we didn't do this. It's like, could we approve authorizing them to spend up to, I can't remember the amount we have in there, but with the caveat that we need to see kind of the plan for the operations. But I worry, and maybe you can speak more to this.
So,
I worry, will we lose out on buses if we
Right,
wait
will
too long?
somebody else buy them? Well, are they gone if we?
Yeah, I don't know what.
So,
we don't
so
move
a few follow-up
fast.
comments. So those 3 buses that we purchased over a year ago, we purchased 7 buses for $70,000. So it was pretty much $10,000 a bus.
Oh, wow.
So those 3 buses were $30,000. If we put a dollar amount on it. So that's number 1. And yes, those were not the best buses, and it was because we waited and drug our feet until September, October to buy buses. And so those were the junk of the lot to an extent. They were still usable. We got a year out of them, but say that. Also, when the original projections were put together, I was not here at that point, but if I remember correctly, the transportation model had like $1.2 million annual cost. Maybe it was more. I don't know if you remember that. It may have been
That was the
1.6
budget to.
Yes.
or 1.7. I don't remember the exact amount, but it was over $1 million to run the transportation company. On your screen, I thought Mr. Bang shared this last maybe 2 months ago. But this shows the districts, maybe Kansas City districts, and how much it costs. I know that's tiny. How much
You
it,
just showed this in finance.
so how much it costs to run these districts' transportation. And they divide that by the total enrolled for those different districts. Last year, Académie Lafayette is kind of in the middle there, $564 per student. If you compare that to someone else, KC International, they're more than almost 3 times, almost 4 times that amount at $1.2 million. Middle of the road, KIP, more than double where we were at.
But is that,
$1 million.
so here you're divided by the total number of students, so it depends on how many students each
Correct,
school.
yes, how many,
So if for us, if we have a lower percentage of students, we actually ferry, that would drop down the numbers.
right.
Yeah, and does that include all the maintenance and stuff that we didn't?
Yes, that's all your transportation costs that are coded to the 2540 section of the ASBIs, whatever.
But I think more importantly, it's good to see that we're ahead of the pack, but it's a large cost for us, and we just need to keep control on it.
Yes.
And if we can drop it from $1 million to $800,000, then it's $200,000 we can spend on teachers.
Right.
So it's really just trying to make sure that we set up best practices for this business that we're in, and that is sustainable in the long run.
I agree, we're at a place that we need somebody to sort of review what we're doing, so we don't just continue to say, let's do this, let's do, like, I think we're making smart decisions, so I don't sort of doubt that, but I think based on where we are to continue to grow and now take on all of our transportation, it makes sense to take a critical eye to it.
In this landscape now where all these schools are taking on their own transportation, are there discussions being had where schools are working together so you don't see 5 bus companies, but Brookside Charter also picks up AL and?
Those
We're
is
not
a-
allowed to.
We are allowed to, yes.
I thought we weren't.
We should do that.
No, Dana doesn't. By then, I make some real money.
Great, I know, there's money to be had here.
So there is, when the commission schools had a convocation, if you will, so all the schools that are under the Missouri
the charter
Public Charter School Commission's purview, they had a convocation, they brought everybody together over 2 days, and this was one of the hot topics. This, along with insurance costs, which nobody's surprised by that. And so the commission the Missouri Public Charter School Association was there and participated. And they have undertaken looking at these issues to try to come up with some ideas, because every single school is struggling financially with these issues. And since we are paid by, students in seats, busing's not an option. We cannot not have kids here because it affects our budget, So, one of the things that is being considered is how do we perhaps match up a larger school like Académie Lafayette or a Frontier Schools. They're the largest charter school on this side of the state. How do we match them up to a smaller school and provide bus service to kind of offset some of these costs? And so that was going to be one of the things that I suggested if you all go the route of having someone come in and give you an analysis. Is there somebody you can pair it with? A couple of schools, maybe like a Gordon Parks is up the way, around the corner.
Right. And Gordon Parks is paying like $2,000 a student or something. I mean, they were really inefficient.
And I think you also have to look at how long is a student on the bus.
Yeah,
So
how long
somebody can look
students
at
are
all
on
of
the
that.
bus.
Yeah.
Can you take your services and sell them to somebody else? And the key to it is, this is one of the things that we're kind of working on, looking at, is larger school districts like Académie Lafayette really don't have the luxury of being able to move bell times. But a smaller school of 150 kids might be able to move theirs later. So it would be a win-win, because they actually get their kids to school and they might start their day later to allow you all, but also create some offset of income. So that's one thing to think about, and just kind of keep your eyes open for what comes out of, even though it was the commission's schools, the Charter School Association is really taking this on. And ironically, they have me and Kent working on it, so that's why I said,
No wonder he's talking about transportation.
yes, and that's why I say, I'll see you tomorrow. So, we're looking at that, and just as an aside, since I'm already doing this, we are looking at how to create one of the things that we've always struggled with is, why can't we just put all of our teachers in one bucket and we all pay? We're looking at how to do that. So it actually may come to pass that you all have that as an option.
Yeah.
The key to it is, you won't have a savings immediately, but what you will get is the opportunity you won't get any surprises where it jumps 25% or 30. One school had a 30% increase. And everybody's eyes roll back in their head, basically. But you won't have those, and then over time, once the reserves are built up, then we can start to talk about getting a savings. But if nothing else, you control your own destiny. You have a little more of this as opposed to this, and you also would probably keep staff happy in that they don't have to, we're changing carriers, so will I be able to keep my doctor or my pediatrician or whatever it is. So look for those things coming to a charter school near you.
But I think as far as where we are currently, that's not gonna change fall, right? I think our goal as a board should be a year from this fall that we find innovations in transportation, whether it's pairing up, like you mentioned, like we have to figure out a different way to do it, but it's not gonna be fall.
Surprised you may be able to make it, one of these smaller schools really might, now's the time.
Yeah.
Because they are on the, no pun intended, they are on the struggle bus because we only have 2 carriers in the city.
I know.
And a small school gets 0 love from them.
Yeah. I mean, we don't get love either.
Yeah.
Nobody loves us. I don't want their love.
Danny, you're exactly right. It's always funny when they, at KC Public, they drop STA, they get in Zoom, and in the transportation where we always kind of laugh because there's only so many bus drivers in the city. So they're just gonna work for a different company. It's the same bus drivers providing the transportation, but it's just a different, management company running them.
Right, and one of the things that that folks are looking at is maybe the schools, one of the companies doesn't really they don't have any benefits for the bus drivers. So being in a position to offer health insurance. Or, one school is, one of those schools, either Brookside or Frontier, is giving them work so that they become 40-hour employees so that they can get benefits. So they drive buses during the day, and then they do something on campus during the day, and then they're there to drive buses that afternoon. So it's some things where you ought to think about it. If you get an expert and you're putting all those options, maybe they can put together something that will work for you and maybe help another charter school be successful as well.
And I know we have lots of other things to discuss tonight, so I think to your original question, I would say we need an expert to sort of look at that, but do we need a vote, like, what's the cost? Do we have to sort of, or it's something that, are there any objections?
Well, I think it's something that probably there should be talk in finance. And then we can see if it's where there has to be. In the meantime.
But I think we should put in the minutes that that's
Yes.
a resolution that we want to have a review of the strategic plan for transportation.
Yeah. I appreciate you bringing that up.
Yes.
Thank you.
And I think we should talk about it at the strategic planning retreat as well, to see where that fits in, so we make sure that that's a near-term objective, not, in the 5-year plan, the 5th year. 5th year reading.
All right,
So are we going to authorize, are we waiting for this? This, or are we going to allow the school to purchase 3 buses? Because can this be done in time for the August?
I think when we approve the resolution and when we attach that, some sort of requirement that a review be done within 30 days.
Right, so we
within
can
30
do that
days,
motion.
we have an expert report that confirms that we have the right orientations.
Yes.
And that, so.
Okay, so if we have that, and, so do you have
30
that?
days.
Right, with the caveat that there will be there will be a review within 30 days of the costs and long-term strategy.
Is that doable?
And is 30 days doable, or do we want to say by the retreat, by June 15th? I mean, that's.
Right, that's 30 days.
That is 30 days, sorry.
It's coming.
It is 30 days. I was like,
I mean,
we'll give you 2 extra days.
I think, the good is the enemy of the word, the better is the enemy of the good. It doesn't need to be a super comprehensive, but I think we want to have at least a quick, as we're plunging to this, we want a quick review, sanity check, that we're on the right track, that the benchmarks are right, that the organization's right, that we have the right systems, that, so that we have some sort of a third-party review that validates how we've been operating so far.
Or what we need to improve.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that, that could be,
period of time.
exactly, that could be a longer term, but at least
Yeah.
that, we're not making any grievous mistakes, and that, the way we are operating fits within the standards of what industry best practices are.
So I move to approve what Jess said.
I said, motion to approve the purchase of 3 school buses not to exceed a total of $200,000 with the caveat that there will be a review of transportation costs and long-term strategy within 30 days of vote. By Beth.
So moved.
Second, Jen.
Any more discussion on it? Nope. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, motion carries. We have short break?
Yes.
Short break time? Okay.
It's a long meeting.
It is a long meeting.
And we
have a closed session.
Yeah, I mean, how much of the budget
Sandwich and closed sessions?
Well, a lot of it's gonna be repeat next month.
and I think there's some more work we need to do before that,
Yes.
so maybe.
I mean, I can do very high level. I can do very high level. dispersion.
Yeah, no, we never.
Well, I think it's good to do both sense that we're making progress.
In case there's some questions. Do we want to discuss the?
And Nathaniel, it's not usually this long, we don't usually have two closed sessions.
Yeah,
It's all right.
I know we're 30 minutes behind.
So you had conversations with him then?
Yeah, so Transport is one of my clients. Transport is one of my clients. And so I knew, yeah, because he had a fractional CFO. And like, so I know Jeff and we just talked on the side of the time. And so,
He was working with Nina.
oh, so he wasn't really working.
But I don't think he needs to go for
Yeah, I think he'd be willing.
What happened
to
when you
sit down. I mean,
guys
you know,
outsourced?
Yes.
it's
So,
willing
I
to
mean,
sit
we had a
down
company
and
that did our
help us,
transportation
you know, he knows
forever.
about stuff, show
They
him
went
issues.
under,
Just did
and so, like, they've been around for the first
You know that?
20 years of our
Consultant.
existence. And we did know, like, in Kansas City, there used to be 8 transportation companies you could work for, and little by little, these 2 companies took over everyone. So there was no competition. They charged outrageous fees, and literally every day, we would have busloads of kids that never got picked up by us for months. I mean, like, there was no end in sight. It's like, okay, well, that's not enough. And we had, like, before, when our original bus company went under, we met and we said, you know, our options are to go with this transportation company or start our own bus company. And we're like, absolutely, we do not want to do that, because it's a huge undertaking. We are not a bus company, it diverts us from what we should be consistent. But then, with month after month after month, kids weren't getting to school, it's like, okay, I guess. And little by little, we started with like 1 company and 3 buses, and then we're like, okay, now we need more buses for this campus.
The short term is really kind of validate that.
Constantly
Where we are
add
in sales.
buses, and yeah, I mean, it's a mess, and every school is in the same position. They are all just throwing their hands up. But I mean, a big piece of it is nobody has a bus drivers, and that's why kids aren't getting to school, because there's nobody willing to drive the bus. But we pay bus drivers terrible money. They have horrible job, right? I mean, to have 40 kids screaming at you, it's an awful job. A lot of times it's part-time, so it's just like a little bit in the morning, right? So it's like, well, maybe if we restructure how we pay and utilize bus drivers, but so it's a very complicated issue that nobody has a stance. Regardless of what school you go to, everybody is like throwing their hands up about what are we gonna do.
I know the other one I visited, they shared the same thing.
Right, yeah,
Same
everybody
challenge.
across the board, everyone cannot figure this out, and yet we are throwing massive sums of money. I mean, if you look at that spreadsheet, the amount of funds that go to transportation for K-12 education is insane.
Who knows who else would have Not maybe, there's only one. There's only one per year.
Maybe there
Okay, are we ready to come back? Let's get this show on the road.
I'm fading, I know.
I gotta say it. Nathaniel, I'm not always
It's an important
I
meeting.
promise.
This
is not a good start.
I told her, I know we have a 30-minute closed session to start, so we're 30 minutes behind.
But seriously, they're not.
Will you feed us? It's hard to work a full day and then have like hours of a meeting.
If I wasn't doing this, I'd be chasing around a 1 and 3-year-old.
So maybe this is relaxing.
It's all good.
Right, yeah.
Right.
It's a different
A
perspective.
little like vacation right now.
Right, I was gonna say. That's the truth. Those darn kids.
Okay, yeah.
We wouldn't be here without the darn kids. Yeah, I'm sure there's plenty over there, so. This is good stuff. All right. Okay, are we ready to restart? Sounds like a plan. I'm ready, is anybody else ready?
Getting started, we're gonna start.
Okay, budget draft.
Alright.
Yay, the most exciting part.
This is next year.
We bumped it.
Okay, So I want to try to make this a little high level, a little bit less involved than what I even have on the slides, just since we'll be revisiting a lot of this information at the board retreat to actually vote on the budget, but it's really good to still cover several of these slides. So, of course, this presentation should help board members understand their responsibilities as financial stewards of the school. We should also be able to understand or have a better understanding of how public schools are funded in Missouri, and then how the school uses estimates for forecasting revenue, and then how we spend the revenue. As a fiduciary, you have certain responsibilities, and so number one, you provide oversight to the school, financial oversight to the school. Number two, you oversee the operating budget to protect the resources of the school. Number three, you have to hold school staff accountable for budget management. Number five, you ensure the necessary policies are in place to prevent fraud, waste, and misappropriation. And then number five, you hold school staff accountable for providing current information regarding funding, entitlements, and then average daily attendance, ADA reporting. And of course, with all that in mind, you conduct that work, in conducting that work, you should keep the strategic plan as a guide as we look at those. All right, so important facts. Public school districts, how are they funded? Well, they're funded with a combination of local, state, and federal dollars. And so for next year, we're projecting, and this is still draft version, so this is not final. But number two there, we're projecting a $21 million operating budget. So that's ballpark. Over 91% of the revenue for this draft budget comes from state and local funding. And approximately 5% of revenues comes from federal government, so title programs, SPED, special education, IDEA. And then fifth item there, we estimate that 2% of 2% of expenditures are covered by fundraising. Now, if we are able to capture some extra grants or additional gifts, that would be in addition to that 2%. And then last item there, approximately 70% of the budget goes towards salaries and benefits. All right, so big picture on the revenue side, $21 million, $21.6 million, that big slice in green, 91% is the state funding. So that's the basic formula, it's Prop C, that's the transportation, that's at full funding, and that's actually at 75% of our costs, allowable costs. The next item down, we already talked about federal funding, that's 5%, 2% for fundraising, and then 2% from other. All right, so the basic formula. This is a really good reminder for all the people around the table, but also for new members as well. The basic formula is the biggest funding that we receive as part of that 91%. So we get state local funds and we multiply that by our weighted average daily attendance, WADA. And estimating that WADA correctly is extremely important when we're budgeting. And so how is WADA calculated? We take our historical attendance and multiply that by the student head count. So 92% by the student head count. And then we get to add in weights, and so those weights are, we get extra funding for students that are more expensive to educate. And so to be eligible for those weighted items, schools must meet specific thresholds designed by DESE. And so currently, Académie Lafayette only meets weights for summer school and then LEP, language, English proficient or something. What was that again?
Limited.
Limited, thank you. And so we take the average daily attendance, we add in those weights, and that's how we get to WADA, weighted average daily attendance. All right, so boiling that down to our numbers, all right? So we take our ADA, so ADA is estimated by taking the projected end-of-year student count, so we think we're gonna end with students, incoming and outgoing students, and then multiply that by the historical 92%. Okay, so we think we're gonna land with a head count at the end of the year of 1402. 1402, multiply that by 92%, and that's where we come up with our average daily attendance of 1290. So 1290, we get to add in summer school. So summer school, we take, summer school enrollment is estimated by multiplying the summer school average daily attendance by the number of total summer school hours, and then we divide that by the number of hours in a typical school year. So to boil that down, total number enrolled, 1,117, attendance rate of 75%, which is an average daily attendance of 762. Then we get to multiply that by the planned hours, which multiplies out to 122,000 hours. And we divide that by the 1,044 of a typical school year. So we get to add in 118. So then our WADA, our weighted average daily attendance that we're projecting for next year is 1,408.
Just one question, is the total head count based on us reaching full capacity in kindergarten?
No.
Okay.
So based on 157.
Okay. Okay, great, that's good to hear.
All right, so taking that a little step further to give you dollars now. So I showed you how to come up with the 1408, that was from that last screen. We multiply that by that state and local funding, which we are projecting that to be 12,400. The current year, right now, we're being paid on 11,300. So it's actually a pretty good jump there.
Yeah.
Big increase.
And part of that is the public school district here in Kansas City, they had been able to look back to prior COVID to be able to be funded on. Now that's dropped off, so we're expecting that the slice of the pie for them may be a little bit smaller, which opens up the bigger pie slice for us to have additional dollars available. And we've confirmed, our accountants gave us that number, and then they checked with DESE, and that's what DESE's saying. DESE's saying, based on, and this is based on ASBR data, is where this is pulled from, the annual Secretary of the Board report, Kansas City's data. And they're actually coming up with 12,444, but I'm taking a slight conservative, just rounding it down to 12,400. So that multiplies out to 17.4, almost 17.5 million. There is a sponsor fee. It is capped at $188,000. So the amount of state funding through the basic formula we should receive, or we're projecting, is 17.2, almost $17.3 million. Any questions over the basic formula, Missouri basic formula? Okay, revenue, the known items. So we know there has been a slight decrease in enrollment due to the pandemic. Mr. Bang talked about how there's that hole of 62 students that went away, so we still are aware of that. There's a decrease in grant funding, so all of the School Smart monies that we had received, that was received through 2022-23, and then all the charter school program federal dollars, that grant money, that's been received through this year. We have a little bit draw left on that, about $100,000, but we'll have received that by the end of this year. There's a decrease also due to the ESSER funds. We've received all of our ESSER monies now, and that was $1 million, so that's gone now. And then we're still seeing effects of the increase to the fix the glitch, so that is a positive there. Unknowns. Obviously, we don't know how summer school attendance will play out this year. We can make estimates. We're estimating 75% attendance. Re-enrollment. There's increased attrition that we know about. I think Mr. Bang has mentioned that that's about 8%. The strategic plan has 5%, get back to 5%. That's over a 5-year period, but that's still an issue, the increased attrition there. Transportation funding. It's included in the governor's budget to be fully funded like it was the current year. But again, that's at 75% of our allowable costs. It could still not be approved and that would be cut. What that would look like, if we go back to, if we go forward a few slides to that transportation slide, when it wasn't fully funded, the state funds was only about $30,000. So that would be detrimental to even this picture. So that's still an unknown there. And then also the total pre-K allocation. Now the legislation that just passed last week bumped the percentage from 4% to 8%, so that's a positive. And based on our free and reduced count for this year, we multiply that by 8%, that's about 28 kids. So compared to the 8 kids that we previously had, that's a little bit of a jump there. Question becomes, how do we have capacity for those pre-K kids? And then last item there, the regular attendance number, we don't have a crystal ball, we don't know what that'll land at, but we can assume 92%. Any questions about the known and unknown? All right, I want to speed this up a little bit more, but on the expenditure side, big picture, so we're spending about $21 million. Biggest chunk of that is salaries and benefits, 70%, 14.7 million. Teaching resources, $650. Summer schools, $800,000. Transportation costs, if we were to look at this, and we'll compare it here in a minute, but transportation costs is $300,000. That does not include the salaries and benefits that are up on line 1. Here in upkeep of the facilities, $1.4 million, 7%. Interest expense on our debt, almost $500,000. And there's other expenses as well. We'll talk about those here in a second. So snapshot of non-salary related expenses. Teaching resources take up 3%, and that would be the different classroom supplies, textbooks, technology supply, instructional technology supplies. Care and upkeep is at 7%. And that's the maintenance of the facility, not including salaries. It's the cutting the lawn, snow removal, utilities, that's a big item within there. And then just regular maintenance of the facility. There's obviously capital expenditures that are items of concern that need to be maintained. So we still have to work on some of these items still, but this is the draft budget. In the middle there, summer school, 4%. We spend 4% of the total expenditures in 6 weeks. So that's quite a bit. But the return on that is helpful because we get to add that 118 to our weighted ADA. The contracted subs are included in there, and then supplies and field trip. Interest expenses, 2%, that's the interest on the loans and the leases. On the far right there, the transportation, 1%, which looks small, but again, that's because the majority of that cost is in wages. And you'll see that there's a decrease in the contracted expense. And then the other, what makes up other is professional development, insurance, other general and administrative costs, and staff recruitment. So I want to dig a little bit further into into that other category there, that
So-
13%. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't think we need to spend a ton of time on this. I think the goal for the retreat is to come up with a way to classify those costs in a way that's meaningful for the board. Because having all these, these columns of numbers, should we spend $8,900 and something on that's not a way to provide oversight. So we're gonna figure a way to present those costs in a way that we understand what it's for, how it's been historically, and what we expect it to be next year in the future. I think we could. Next slide.
Okay. All right, so part of that's the development, and
Sorry, so.
Pardon?
That's you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, we're talking about you.
Sorry.
I want to make sure you were.
Sister-in-law.
I wanted to make sure you were I didn't mean to catch you off guard, but.
So, part of the budget we're still working on is to finalize the development budget, but we definitely take a look at the revenues that we get from fundraising and expenses that it costs to, fundraise. And so these are still areas of, that we're working on. Something else that we talked about in finance is adding a line for like grants that we expect. And so I'm planning to work with Allison next week to finalize this section, but this kind of gives you an idea of what we're looking at right now.
I think it's another example where the revenue is split over the P&L, the expenses as well. So having a bird's eye view of really what is the contribution from our development team, I think is going to be enlightening for us. I mean, my first reaction as a board member is, we now have a fully staffed team, and I would expect that they would contribute more than $100,000 to the school contribution. So it's not going to be an overnight thing. I don't mean to put pressure on you, but I think, this is a big effort. We have now 2 senior employees in the team, and we need to build a plan for what it is that we're expecting from fundraising efforts for the school.
Same line of reason, and this kind of goes back to what we were talking about 10 minutes ago, 15 minutes ago, about transportation. We need to have our eyes on what we're doing with transportation, what it looks like. We'll circle back around to this once we have a look from the outside. Any additional comments there, Olivia? Okay, so the summary for the budget. So the preliminary budget's here on the left-hand side. Last year's budget is kind of in the middle, change there. And then this forecast is what we're forecasting for the current year. And that change is between the preliminary budget and the forecast there. So what we're planning for next year on the revenue side is at $21 million in revenue. Expenses is 20 million, almost 21 million, so it's close to 600,000, almost $700,000 revenue over expenses. We do have principal debt payment service of about $400,000, 358. And so total estimated revenues over expenses and debt service is 296, almost $300,000. We are planning for capital projects purchases of 350. So right now we're working with a deficit of $53,000. However, that's manageable. We're still working on the budget. And we can compare that to last year's budget. That's this change column. And then if we look at the actual, what we're forecasting, that's this far right column. The change in revenue is the additional funding for the basic formula. We're getting an increase there quite a bit, and let me just jump ahead here for a second. So we're getting an additional, two slides forward, additional funding from that basic formula of about $2 million, but we're losing the ESSER 3 money. So those are really the high level changes there. One thing to note on SPED or IDEA, in the current fiscal year, we received about $300,000 in July of 2023. That was carryover from the previous year that DESE they ran out of money, and so they paid us that in July. So that's why you see a drop there in the SPED dollars. Federal CSP grant also drops off. Any questions over revenue there? Okay. Expenses, the prelim budget versus the forecast. So salaries were increasing by $1.5 million. And what that's made up of, just the normal, the salary block or salary scale increases. It's a mix of 1.5% to 0.5% increases. We also have taken the bus drivers in-house, so there's increases there. And then the maintenance worker, that's also a salary increase. Then there's corresponding benefits increases on that. So about $2.2 million in salaries and benefits for next year compared to this year. And then, transportation costs, you see that drop, and that's because we're taking the salaries in-house essentially. So those are just operating costs and not wages on this line, or this cell, I guess you'd say. Any questions over expenses?
So it's a lot of numbers, I think the message today is that we're working on the budget, we're making good progress. There's still quite a bit of work to be done, but we want to be able to present some solid numbers by the time we get to the retreat and have a way for the board to weigh on the critical decisions that the school is facing.
Debt service, I don't really want to go too detailed into this. You've seen these slides before. One maybe addition is the cash secured loan that's with the buses. When we purchased the buses back in September, October, we purchased a CD at Country Club Bank, and we secured a loan with those funds. So we could potentially pay this $216,000 off in June, if that's something we want to do. Capital projects for next year, there's summer maintenance that needs to be done, $140,000. This is that $350 we were talking about a few minutes ago. Summer maintenance that needs to be done. There's paint and patch that needs to be done at all three campuses, $60,000. There's weather caulking. The south of this building leaks or water comes in when it rains. So there's $50,000 of weather caulking that needs to be done. We put in a placeholder of $50,000 for bus repairs. And then roof repairs that need to be done. This number actually may be kind of low. We may need actually more than $50,000 in roof repairs. Comparing that to last year, we had the armor, music, French rooms, $130,000 budgeted, and oak repairs. That was the fire panel, I believe.
So I think this is also a good time to bring up a related issue. We are going to be operating with a surplus of almost $900,000 this year. We have a very large reserve fund. Question become, should we be running a $900,000 surplus? Are there crying capital upgrades that we need to do to our schools? I mean, I'm an Oak parent, and the Oak building, I think, really needs some love. And in general, what is, as a school, what is our purpose? Each time we put money in the reserve fund, we're taking money away from educating the kids today for benefits in the future that they will not benefit from. So I think we should really, I would like to have a formal discussion as a board, maybe at the retreat, on whether these are good priorities to have and whether we should take advantage of these, at least at the minimum, take advantage of the windfall we're having this year to catch up on some of these projects.
While still having a safe reserve.
Absolutely.
How safe is too safe.
Exactly.
But we don't need to add to
Exactly. I mean, I think the requirements from our sponsor is 3%.
Right, we
8%,
far exceed that.
and we have 30%.
Okay, right.
So we are, so obviously
Let's go shopping.
we do wanna have, I'm a finance guy, we do wanna have a cushion. I'm not advocating to be reckless, but at the same time, we have needs, we have kids who are falling behind, we have an attrition rate that is worrying. So is there stuff we can do to start remedying some of these issues?
Key takeaways that I want you to have. So we still need to finalize staffing. So that's, like I said, this is a draft budget, obviously. So we're still finalizing staffing. We'll update the enrollment numbers based on the applications, the summer school amounts as we get closer to June. And then the decrease in federal funding, we've received all of our ESSER money, so that's why that has gone away. That's why there's $1 million down in that revenue section compared to getting the $2 million for basic formula. And then finalizing just our contracted services and the debt schedule. And then last item there is just to balance that current projected deficit. Any questions?
That was the short version.
That was the short version.
It's hard to do a whole year's budget shortly.
So we've got some work to do at the retreat. But this really sets the stage, so.
Yes.
It's really good. Yeah. All right, development, follow that.
Mine's easy.
We like easy.
Yeah, right. I don't have, I kept
Sorry,
it
I'm
brief.
trying to get you back over here.
You're fine. I kept it brief knowing that we'd have other competitions this month. I did want to give a breakdown though of the evening in Paris. There we go. We have an annual fund goal of 520,000 this year. I did confirm with finance, didn't get this updated though. We are at 480, a little over 480 right now. So that's great. It feels, I mean, I know it's not our goal, so not great, but given that we didn't have a development team for 4 months, 5 months, it feels good. Given the context. Evening in Paris, we had a gross goal of, an original goal of 128,000 for gross. Our total gross was 138,500. Total net was 99,395, meaning we had total expenses of 39,000. That is about 28% overhead. My goal was 25%, but a good goal based off of number of fundraising professionals that I spoke to around this is 25 to 35%. Yeah. So we're well within that. I feel good about it. I think we can exceed that next year. I think we can actually keep those total expenses down. This was definitely a rebuilding year for us for sure, and I think we rebuilt it.
There was a lot of excitement. There was a lot of people who came who want to come back. So it was
Yes,
great event.
that's
Some
right.
people who talked about wanting to get involved in it next year. I think it did a lot for our community.
And talking to the parents who didn't come, so I think we.
So I think we can only go up from here just on this event and all of our stuff, but I thought, I'm happy with where these numbers come out this year. And then, yes, thanks to our wonderful supporters, we, like Steven said, we have 33,000 for funded need. That's 15,000 that came from the PTO, 5,000 from SLU, and then a couple of other strong donations leading into that, as well as all the parent support. So speaking of transportation, that is going towards our transportation costs as well. And I just think it was a good event, so.
Yes.
Yeah. Any questions?
Awesome. I mean, I think that far exceeds what we've done in recent years, so I would agree. You definitely built it back because it had been a struggle in recent.
No, it was fine. It was fine. Thank you guys all for your support too. Thank you for everybody listening that also maybe supported it. It was fun.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Go past the head of school report, just down to the presidents. We're at the last slide, guys.
Before the closed
Before the
session.
closed session, I know. Is now when we tell Nathaniel all of our board meetings are this long?
I somehow remember the last time we had a crop of new folks, you all had a
Right, did the same
ridiculously
thing.
long one,
Yeah.
it was like, what is happening?
This is not the norm. But just a reminder, the strategic planning retreat, June 15th, will be 8:30 to 12:30. Do not have the location yet. It's gonna be one of 3 locations. It's either gonna be at School Smart, it's gonna be at the Kaufman Conference Center on Rock Hill, or it's gonna be at the Swope Health Community Room. So one of those 3 places in the general area, and as soon as we have that confirmed, we'll let you know. We'll have a light breakfast and lunch. So we'll start with the strategic planning retreat, and then we'll have our board meeting at 11:30, and it will not exceed till 12:30. May not even go that long because we'll cover so much in the strategic planning. So there's no board meeting that Monday, so our regular second Monday of the month, June 10th, we will not have a board meeting, and we will take July off. I think we started that last year or the year before, but it's just good instead of trying to get everybody, the admin needs a break. Everybody needs a break. And then if you have not confirmed, if you're able to attend graduation tomorrow for our Ale High School students, just do let me know, because board will kind of sit together. There's one of those things where as part of the commencement ceremony, the board will approve the class graduation. So we want to have everyone that can be there. And with that, roll call to go into closed session.
I think I have to move to go into closed session.
Yes.
Roll call, second, and then roll call vote.
Okay, motion to go into closed session,
So moved.
What's the basis for it?
to discuss, legal and personnel issues.
Second.
Sorry, any discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Yeah,
Aye.
Roll call. Okay, let's go. Let's start with, Lauren.
Aye.
Jess, are you getting this?
Yes.
Start roll call, okay.
Beth, yes.
Pam, yes.
Jen, yes.
Lisa, yes.
Gwen, yes.
Kelly, yes.
Nathaniel, yes.
Olivier, yes.
Michelle, yes.
Do I have to write down all those names, or just everybody said yes?
No, you have to.
Yeah, you
Right,
have
yeah.
to show each person voted yes.
PAM for my spelling.
Oh, my.
Ooh.
Camelot.
Don't get it wrong.
YouTube off of here.
And we're already, and now.
Pam Anderson.
Pamela Sue.
We need to stop the recording for
Right.
the.
Yeah.
Yes, we do. That's what.
I think we stay on Zoom.
So we don't start, and, yeah, we'll stay on Zoom for Lauren, but we'll wait for
Stop
Stephen
the-
to confirm that we're out.
That YouTube at the top, you should be able to click on that.
Are you seeing that?
Can't you go right here?